Ever feel like the chaos of modern life is overwhelming? What if the secret to inner peace has been around for over 2,000 years? In today's video, we're unlocking the power of Stoicism, not as dusty philosophy, but as a vibrant, practical guide for navigating today's world with clarity and resilience. Stick around till the end to discover actionable steps that could transform your daily life. Number 1. Avoid extremes. Choose balance in all aspects of life. Life often feels like a constant balancing act, doesn't it? We're always pulled in different directions, whether it's work and rest, indulging and restraining, or being ambitious and staying content. Finding that middle ground, where things feel just right, can be tricky, but it's worth the effort. The key? Avoid extremes. When we swing too far in one direction, life becomes more stressful, more complicated. On the other hand, when we learn to embrace balance, it brings a sense of peace, flow, and ease. Think about it. Whenever you get too focused on one thing, something else inevitably starts to suffer. Maybe you're too wrapped up in work and suddenly, your relationships start to feel neglected. Or perhaps you're chasing relaxation so hard that you find yourself falling behind in areas that need attention. It's a delicate dance, for sure, but a dance worth mastering. When you begin to notice these imbalances, it's not about swinging back to the opposite extreme, it's about finding that sweet spot in the middle. The beauty of balance is that it lets you enjoy the best of both worlds. It's like standing on a seesaw where neither side is too high or too low. You're grounded, steady, and yet still capable of moving. When you start living in this way, it becomes easier to make choices that align with your well-being. You don't have to chase after extremes, trying to prove something to yourself or others. You just know when enough is enough, and when it's time to step up or ease off. But achieving balance isn't about being rigid. It's actually the opposite, it's about being flexible. Life throws curveballs. Sometimes, things lean a little more toward one side, and that's okay. The key is knowing when to gently nudge yourself back into equilibrium. This flexibility is the foundation of living a balanced life. It's not a fixed point, it's a constant adjustment, a little give and take. And the more you practice, the more intuitive it becomes. Avoiding extremes also means letting go of the idea that life is all or nothing. So often, we get caught up in thinking we need to do everything perfectly or not at all. But that's a recipe for burnout. Instead, aim for consistency over perfection. A little progress each day, a little effort in multiple areas, adds up over time. It might not feel like a grand achievement in the moment, but it creates a life that feels fuller, more complete. And here's a secret: balance isn't boring. It doesn't mean settling for less or living in mediocrity. Instead, it gives you the freedom to enjoy life without the constant push and pull. It allows you to experience things fully, without being overwhelmed or deprived. It's about savoring the journey, rather than racing toward the destination, thinking only one extreme or the other will bring happiness. In the end, choosing balance is an act of self-care, a way of respecting your own needs while still engaging with the world. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present, adaptable, and, most importantly, kind to yourself. So, why not give it a try? Step back from the extremes and see how your life unfolds when you start living in the middle. Number 2, view setbacks as training. Setbacks, huh? They're those frustrating moments when you feel like life has thrown a curveball straight at your face. You were coasting along, doing fine, and then, bam! Suddenly, you're knocked off course. But here's the thing, setbacks are not the end of the road. They're more like the unexpected pit stops along the way that give you a chance to learn something new, even if it's not what you signed up for. I know. Nobody likes to hear that in the moment. But if you shift your mindset just a little, you'll see setbacks not as roadblocks but as training grounds. They're opportunities in disguise, and I promise you, there's something to be gained every single time. Think about it. When everything goes smoothly, you don't really learn all that much. It's nice, of course, it feels good. But it's in the tough moments, the frustrating stumbles, that you truly develop your resilience. It's like working out. You don't build muscle by lifting feathers, right? You need resistance. Setbacks are that resistance for your life. They're the tough weights that push you, that challenge you. And, just like with working out, it can hurt. It can be uncomfortable. But the growth? It's undeniable. When you hit a setback, instead of immediately spiraling into frustration or self-doubt, try to pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this? Sometimes the lesson isn't obvious at first. Maybe it's about patience. Maybe it's about finding a new approach. Or maybe, just maybe, it's about toughening up. Whatever it is, if you approach it as part of your training, it shifts the way you experience the setback. Suddenly, it's not an attack on your progress, but a step within it. Also, keep in mind that setbacks often push you into a kind of trial-by-fire situation where you have to get creative, think outside the box, or tap into parts of yourself you didn't even know were there. And those are the moments when you really start to grow. It's as if life is saying, okay, time to level up. So, in a weird way, setbacks are like life's version of a coach that pushes you to be better, stronger, and more capable. But here's something key to remember: setbacks don't define you. They're just moments, not permanent states of being. They don't mean you're a failure, they mean you're human. The more you train yourself to view these moments as part of your growth, the less power they have over you. Instead of getting stuck, you start to bounce back faster. You build that mental and emotional muscle that says, okay, this is tough, but I can handle it. That's where the magic happens. So, next time life throws a wrench in your plans, don't be too quick to curse it. Yeah, it's annoying. It's frustrating. But also, take a second to realize that this is part of your training. It's shaping you into someone who can handle more, someone who knows how to pivot, adapt, and come out stronger on the other side. It's not about avoiding the challenges, it's about embracing them as part of your journey to balance. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Finding that balance between the highs and lows, the wins and losses, the smooth stretches and the setbacks? You don't have to love the tough moments, but you can definitely learn to respect them. They're just part of the ride. Number 3, practice mindfulness and presence. You know that feeling when your mind is racing a million miles a minute? It's like you're physically in one place but mentally scattered, juggling tasks, to-dos, and random thoughts all at once. That's what happens when you're not present, when you're caught up in the swirl of what's coming next or what already happened. The solution? Mindfulness. It's the antidote to that chaos, the secret ingredient that helps you stay grounded. Being mindful doesn't mean you need to sit cross-legged in silence for hours. Not at all. It's about paying attention, intentionally. It's that simple, yet we often forget to do it. When you're mindful, you're tuning into the here and now. You're savoring what's happening in the moment instead of rushing past it. It's like pressing pause on the busyness of life so you can really be in the moment, even if that moment is as ordinary as washing dishes or drinking your morning coffee. Now, this doesn't mean the thoughts in your head magically disappear. You'll still have them, but mindfulness helps you notice those thoughts without letting them run the show. Instead of getting swept away by them, you acknowledge they're there and then let them go. It's like watching clouds pass by in the sky, acknowledging they exist but not chasing after them. When you practice mindfulness regularly, even just for a few minutes each day, it starts to spill over into the rest of your life. Suddenly, you're able to focus more at work, engage more deeply in conversations, and notice the little things that usually fly under the radar. Mindfulness helps you sharpen your awareness of everything around you, and it invites a deeper connection with whatever you're doing. One of the biggest benefits of being more present is that it helps you find balance. Life is a constant tug-of-war between different extremes, whether it's work versus rest, ambition versus contentment, or even excitement versus calm. When you're mindful, you start to sense when things are getting out of whack. You recognize when you're pushing too hard or not paying enough attention to your needs. It's like a built-in check and balance system that keeps you on course, reminding you to realign when necessary. And then there's the stress factor. When you're always thinking ahead or ruminating on the past, stress sneaks in and starts to take over. Mindfulness pulls you back from that edge. When you're fully engaged with the present moment, there's no room for stress to breed. You're no longer worrying about what might happen or regretting what already did. Instead, you're giving your full attention to whatever is in front of you, whether that's a task, a conversation, or even just breathing. Let's be real, it takes practice. You won't get it right all the time, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll drift off into autopilot mode, and other times you'll catch yourself and pull yourself back to the present. The key is to keep coming back to that mindful space whenever you notice you're slipping away. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And over time, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. So, give it a try. Start with small moments, maybe during your next meal or while taking a walk. Pay attention to what's around you, how your body feels, what thoughts are popping up in your mind. And when you get distracted, because you will, gently bring your focus back. No judgment, no pressure, just a simple return to the now. The more you do this, the more you'll find that sweet spot where balance comes more easily, and life feels a little more aligned. Number 4, cultivate a sense of shared humanity. In a world that feels so divided, finding a sense of shared humanity can seem like an elusive goal. It's easy to fall into the habit of seeing differences first, focusing on what separates us rather than what connects us. But here's the thing, when you take a step back, when you really stop to think about it, we're all just people trying to make sense of life in our own ways. And recognizing that, cultivating that sense of shared humanity, is one of the most important steps toward balance. So, how do we start? Well, it begins with something pretty simple, empathy. Yeah, that old word we hear tossed around, but how often do we really practice it? When you stop and make the effort to understand someone else's perspective, something shifts. You don't have to agree with them, but you see that they're navigating the same world as you are, even if they're doing it in a completely different way. You might not walk the same path, but you're walking side by side, and that makes a difference. Now, cultivating a sense of shared humanity doesn't mean glossing over differences or pretending we all think alike. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about acknowledging those differences while recognizing the core of what it means to be human. There's this intricate dance between individuality and unity. By leaning into our shared humanity, we can respect the things that make us unique while still finding common ground. This approach brings a sense of balance into your relationships and interactions with the world. You stop seeing others as them and begin to see them as part of the larger us. It's like you're taking off the lenses of judgment or bias and choosing instead to wear glasses that show the full picture, complicated, messy, and beautiful. But let's be real. It's not always easy to cultivate that sense of shared humanity, especially when we're faced with people who challenge our beliefs, push our buttons, or seem to live in a completely different reality. In those moments, it's tempting to retreat, to fall into the trap of thinking you're right, and they're wrong. Yet, the very act of pushing past that knee-jerk reaction and digging deeper to find understanding is where growth happens. And with that growth comes balance. When you foster this mindset, you start to see the ripple effects in your life. Conflicts feel less heated, interactions become more meaningful, and your own sense of peace increases. You begin to recognize that everyone is carrying their own baggage, dealing with their own struggles, and chasing their own dreams. And that awareness? It lightens your load too. You don't have to carry the weight of judgment, defensiveness, or self-righteousness anymore. You can just be, and let others be too. It also means being willing to extend kindness and compassion, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be understood, accepted, and seen for who we are. And the best way to get that is to offer it to others first. In doing so, you help create a world where balance isn't just something we talk about, it's something we live. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple but powerful. When you cultivate a sense of shared humanity, you bring more balance into your life and the world around you. It's a conscious choice to see beyond surface-level differences and connect with people on a deeper level. And in that connection, you find a kind of peace and harmony that can't be found through division. It's about being open, curious, and, most of all, human. Number 5. Study nature to remind yourself of impermanence. Have you ever really taken a moment to observe nature? I mean, really look at it, how everything is constantly shifting, moving, and changing. It's wild when you think about it. Nothing in nature ever stays the same for long. The seasons cycle through their endless dance. Plants grow, bloom, and then, just as quickly, wither away. The clouds roll by, rearranging the sky with new patterns every hour. It's like the world is always in motion, reminding us that nothing is permanent. And that, right there, is a lesson we can all use. Studying nature can be a powerful way to ground yourself in the understanding that impermanence is the only constant. It's easy to get caught up in our human lives, where we cling to stability, hoping things stay exactly as they are, especially when they're going well. But nature doesn't work like that, does it? Everything that lives eventually fades, transforms, or moves on. And that's not some sad, gloomy truth, it's simply reality. When you step outside and really pay attention to what's happening around you, it's like a gentle nudge from the universe saying, hey, things change. That's just how it is. The tree that stands tall today might lose its leaves tomorrow. The sunny skies might suddenly give way to a storm. And yet, none of it is wrong or out of place. It's just the natural rhythm of life. There's a peace in accepting that flow, rather than fighting it. You see, our desire to hold on to things, to freeze moments in time, is often what leads to stress or disappointment. But when you take a page out of nature's book, you realize that letting go and allowing things to change is a kind of freedom. Think about it, if everything stayed the same, life would get pretty stagnant, wouldn't it? It's the ebb and flow, the ups and downs, that give life its richness and depth. Nature embraces this idea fully, without hesitation. So, what can we learn from that? Well, it's a reminder that nothing, whether it's joy or sorrow, lasts forever. The good moments? They're fleeting. The tough times? They pass too. That's the beauty of it all. Impermanence means that things are always moving. You're never stuck in one place, even if it feels like you are. Just like the ocean's tides, life is always shifting, carrying you to new places, new experiences. Next time you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or even when everything's going great, take a moment to reconnect with nature. Observe how it doesn't try to hold on to anything. The wind comes and goes. The flowers bloom and fade. And yet, everything is exactly as it should be. There's a rhythm, a natural balance, in that impermanence. It's not chaos, it's harmony. The world isn't falling apart just because things are changing, it's finding its way to the next phase, the next season. This perspective can help bring balance to your own life. It's easy to get stuck in the extremes, clinging too tightly to good times or resisting change when it shows up. But when you remind yourself of nature's impermanence, it becomes a little easier to go with the flow. You start to see that it's okay for things to shift. In fact, it's necessary. So, study nature. Let it remind you that everything is always evolving, whether we like it or not. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a bit of peace in that constant state of change. It's all part of the balance, knowing that nothing stays the same forever, and that's perfectly okay. You can take a breath, loosen your grip on the need for control, and trust that life, like nature, will keep moving forward, just as it's meant to. Number 6. Practice acts of charity and justice as part of personal growth. There's something about giving, really giving, that changes you. And I'm not just talking about dropping coins in a jar or donating things you no longer need. True charity, the kind that comes from deep within, has this remarkable way of shifting your perspective, opening your heart, and growing you as a person. When you practice charity, you're doing more than just helping others, you're nurturing your own soul. It's funny how that works, right? You give something away, and somehow, you gain more in return. And I don't mean in a material sense. It's more like this subtle yet powerful transformation inside. You start to realize that the world is bigger than your own concerns, and that maybe, just maybe, there's something incredibly fulfilling about lifting others up. But here's the thing. Charity isn't just about handing over something to someone who needs it. It's about seeing people, really seeing them. Recognizing their humanity. Understanding their struggles without judgment. It's about acknowledging that everyone is walking their own path, and sometimes people stumble along the way. And you get to help pick them up. That act alone can change how you see your place in the world. And then there's justice. It's a word that's thrown around a lot, but at its core, it's about fairness. It's about standing up when you see something that's not right. And let's be honest, there's plenty in life that feels unfair. But rather than letting that overwhelm you or push you toward extremes, like cynicism or indifference, choosing justice helps you find balance. It's not about solving every problem, but it is about playing your part in making things a little more right, a little more just. When you start paying attention to justice, you begin to understand that there's more to growth than personal achievements or success. Growth doesn't just happen in isolation. It's tied to the well-being of others. The more you lean into that understanding, the more you expand your sense of self. It's almost like justice and charity stretch you in ways you didn't know were possible, making you more compassionate, more aware, and ultimately more human. It's also important to recognize that both charity and justice work hand in hand. Charity is the immediate response, the action that helps someone in need right now. But justice? That's the long-term vision. That's when you start asking why there's a need for charity in the first place. It's when you look beyond the surface to understand the systems and structures that keep people from thriving. Practicing both is a way of finding balance, not just in your life, but in the world around you. Here's where personal growth comes in. You can't grow if you're only focused on yourself. Growth happens when you stretch your capacity for empathy, when you get out of your own head and care about something bigger than your own comfort zone. Acts of charity teach you humility. They remind you that we all need each other in some way. Acts of justice, on the other hand, teach you courage. They challenge you to speak up when it would be easier to stay silent. Both require something of you, and in return, they give you a deeper understanding of who you are and who you want to become. And let's be real, this isn't always easy. It's one thing to drop off a donation or sign a petition. But the real work of charity and justice goes deeper than that. It asks you to be present, to get uncomfortable sometimes, to face the hard truths about the world and your role in it. But it's in those moments of discomfort that the most profound growth happens. So, how does this connect to balance? Simple. Life can easily become a me-centered experience if you let it. We focus on our goals, our problems, our needs. But practicing charity and justice pulls you out of that tunnel vision. It's a reminder that balance is about looking outward as much as it is about looking inward. You need both for a life that feels whole. charity and justice, in their truest forms, are ways to grow not just for your own sake but for the sake of a better, more balanced world. Number 7. Pursue excellence in all areas of life. Pursuing excellence. It sounds like something straight out of a motivational poster, doesn't it? But when you really think about it, striving for excellence doesn't mean chasing perfection or pushing yourself to the point of burnout. It's about showing up every day with the mindset that you can always improve, no matter what area of life you're focused on. Excellence, in this sense, is less about a destination and more about an ongoing journey. Now, let's be clear, pursuing excellence isn't about trying to be the best at everything, all the time. That's a fast track to frustration and exhaustion. It's more about bringing your best effort to whatever you do, whether it's your work, your health, your relationships, or even your hobbies. It's the idea that you can approach each part of your life with care and intention, making small but meaningful strides toward betterment. You don't have to overhaul everything overnight. Instead, excellence comes from those little adjustments and improvements you make along the way. But here's the catch: excellence doesn't thrive in extremes. It's not about grinding nonstop until you collapse or obsessing over every tiny detail to the point of missing the bigger picture. In fact, true excellence happens when you find balance. When you're able to give your best effort without sacrificing your well-being in the process. It's recognizing when to push yourself and when to ease off the gas. It's knowing that resting, reflecting, and recharging are just as crucial to excellence as hard work and determination. And let's talk about the different areas of life where this idea of excellence applies. It's not just your career or your personal goals. Excellence touches everything. It's in how you take care of your body, how you nurture your relationships, how you spend your time. Think of it like weaving a tapestry. Each thread, whether it's health, work, or connection, adds to the overall picture. When you pursue excellence across these threads, you're crafting a life that feels richer, more intentional. You're not just coasting through or focusing on one area at the expense of another, you're creating harmony. That doesn't mean you're always going to be equally excellent in every part of your life at all times, though. Life has its seasons, and sometimes one area needs more attention than another. And that's okay. Excellence isn't about balance in the sense of perfect equilibrium, but more about being aware of where your energy is going and making sure it aligns with your values and aspirations. Some days you'll excel in one area, and others might take a back seat for a while. The point is, you're always moving with purpose. Pursuing excellence also requires patience, with yourself and with the process. You won't always get it right, and that's part of the deal. There will be setbacks, times when you feel like you're not making progress or when things fall apart a little. But those moments are opportunities to learn, to reflect, and to come back stronger. Excellence isn't a straight line, it's a winding path full of twists and turns. And honestly, that's what makes it interesting. So, what does it mean to pursue excellence in all areas of life? It means showing up with intention, striving to do your best while understanding that your best will look different on different days. It's about balance, not perfection. It's about living with purpose, paying attention to the details, and understanding that excellence is not something you achieve once and for all. It's something you cultivate, day by day, across the many facets of your life. And in that pursuit, you'll find that excellence isn't just about the outcomes. It's about the process, the growth, and the fulfillment that comes from knowing you're putting in the effort to create a life that reflects your values. A life that, even with its ups and downs, feels balanced and meaningful. Number 8. Practice mindful silence to cultivate inner wisdom. In a world that's always buzzing, notifications pinging, conversations swirling, thoughts racing, it's easy to forget what silence even feels like. We get so used to the noise that the idea of silence can feel strange, maybe even uncomfortable. But that's where the magic is. Practicing mindful silence is like giving yourself permission to stop, just for a moment, and listen. not to the outside world, but to something deeper, something quieter, something wiser inside of you. It's not about forcing your mind to go blank or sitting in a completely still space. Silence doesn't mean the absence of sound. It means creating space to tune into what's beneath all the surface-level chatter. There's a difference, right? It's about being present, fully present, and allowing your mind to settle, even if just for a few minutes. In that stillness, in those quiet moments, something shifts. You start to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to sense things that were drowned out before by the noise of everyday life. When you embrace mindful silence, you're not just turning off the external noise. You're giving your mind room to breathe. Think of it like clearing away mental clutter. Suddenly, all those racing thoughts that pull you in 100 different directions start to slow down. And in that space, you find clarity. You find perspective. Sometimes, the answers you've been searching for have been there all along, but you couldn't hear them because the noise was too loud. Here's the thing, silence has its own language. And it's one we don't speak often enough. In silence, you begin to notice the subtle shifts in your emotions, the small nudges from your intuition, the quiet truths you might have been avoiding. Silence doesn't demand anything from you. It's patient. It waits for you to come to it, to be still enough to listen. And when you do, you begin to access a well of inner wisdom that's always been there. You start to see things differently, with more balance, more understanding. But cultivating mindful silence is a practice. It's not something that happens instantly. The first few times, your mind might still feel chaotic, like a room full of voices all talking at once. That's normal. You just let the noise be there without judgment and keep coming back to the quiet. Eventually, the noise settles. You find that sweet spot of silence where your mind is calm, but aware. It's in this space that your inner wisdom has room to rise up. It's where insights bubble to the surface without you even trying. And don't be fooled into thinking that mindful silence is only for times of peace or solitude. You can find moments of quiet even in the busiest parts of your day. It's less about the setting and more about your intention. You can be mindful in silence while sitting in traffic, while taking a walk, or even in the middle of a hectic workday. It's about learning to dip beneath the noise and tune into yourself. Practicing mindful silence doesn't mean disconnecting from the world. Quite the opposite. It helps you connect more deeply with yourself and others. When you're in touch with your own inner wisdom, you show up in the world with more balance. You respond rather than react. You make choices from a place of understanding rather than impulse. Silence gives you that space to pause, reflect, and find your center. So, make time for it. Let silence be a part of your routine, just like anything else you do for your well-being. Sit with it, listen to it, and allow it to guide you. In that quiet space, you'll discover more wisdom than you ever thought possible, wisdom that's been quietly waiting for you all along. Number 9. Strive for a state of serene calm and peace of mind. There's a certain magic in finding calm amid the storm, isn't there? It's like you're standing at the center of a whirlwind, but instead of getting caught up in the chaos, you just breathe. Everything slows down. And for a moment, the noise fades, and you're left with stillness, a rare, precious kind of stillness that can feel elusive in a world that's constantly rushing. But here's the thing, calm isn't something that just falls into your lap. It's not like one day you wake up and suddenly life is peaceful and serene. Nope. It's something you have to actively work on, something you have to choose. And that choice? It's not always easy. Sometimes it feels like the world is pushing you to the edge, daring you to lose your cool. But striving for calm is about learning to step back and say, I'm not going to let this control me. It's that quiet strength you build when you decide that your peace of mind is worth protecting. Now, don't confuse calm with doing nothing or being passive. It's not about sitting around, detached from the world. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Finding calm means engaging with life fully, but from a place of balance. It's being able to face whatever comes your way without letting it shake you to your core. You know how some people can walk into a stressful situation and just handle it? Like they've got this invisible bubble around them, protecting them from all the noise? That's the kind of calm we're talking about here. It's steady, it's grounded, and it's incredibly powerful. Peace of mind, on the other hand, is like the long-term effect of choosing calm. It's not just about handling moments of stress, but creating a mental space where you feel settled. It's that feeling you get when your thoughts aren't racing, when you're not second-guessing every decision, and when you've learned to let go of the things that aren't serving you. It's like you've cleared out the clutter from your mind, and what's left is this beautiful, peaceful expanse where you can just be. But how do you get there? That's the tricky part. Striving for peace of mind often means you have to start noticing the things that disturb your peace in the first place. It could be external pressures, internal worries, or even that constant need to be on all the time. Once you're aware of what's disrupting your calm, you can begin to address it. Sometimes that means making changes, big or small. Other times, it's about accepting that some things are out of your control, and that's okay. The pursuit of peace is also about balance. It's about finding that sweet spot between action and rest, between doing and simply being. Life has this way of pulling us in 1,000 different directions, making it easy to lose ourselves in the process. But when you strive for calm, you're choosing not to get swept up in that whirlwind. You're choosing to pause, to reflect, and to act from a place of clarity. And let's be honest, there will be days when it feels impossible. Days when everything seems to go wrong, and calm feels like the last thing you can manage. But that's where the striving comes in. It's not about being perfectly calm all the time, because that's just not realistic. It's about the effort, the intention behind it. Each time you choose to slow down instead of react, each time you let go of what you can't change, you're inching closer to that state of serene calm. Ultimately, striving for peace of mind is about finding your center. It's about knowing that, no matter what life throws at you, you have the ability to ground yourself. It's like carrying a little bubble of calm with you wherever you go. Sure, the world around you might get loud and chaotic, but inside, there's a quiet space that's all yours. And that's where true peace lives. So, don't expect to nail it all the time. Give yourself grace when the chaos gets the best of you. But keep coming back to that place of calm, keep striving for that peace of mind. Because in the end, it's not about reaching some perfect state of eternal serenity. It's about the journey, about choosing balance, again and again, in a world that's always tilting one way or another. Number 10, reflect on your day through journaling. Let's talk about journaling. It's one of those things you hear about all the time, but maybe it sounds a little cliché or too simple to actually make a difference. But when you really get into it, journaling is like having a quiet conversation with yourself at the end of the day. It's not about writing a novel or documenting every single thing that happened. No, it's about pausing for a moment, reflecting on what went down, and giving your mind some space to process it all. A little time to sift through the noise, if you will. There's something powerful about putting your thoughts on paper, or typing them out if that's more your style. It doesn't matter how polished or perfect it is. What matters is that it's honest. That's where the magic of journaling really happens. You start to see things more clearly. Patterns emerge. Suddenly, things that felt overwhelming seem a little more manageable. Or maybe, you notice something you hadn't even realized was bothering you. Journaling is a way to bring balance into your day, especially when life feels like it's moving too fast or pulling you in a million directions. By reflecting on what happened, whether it was a great day, a challenging one, or just a typical Tuesday, you create a space where you can step back and make sense of it all. It's like hitting the pause button before jumping into the next thing. And here's the thing, you don't need to stick to some rigid format. There are no rules here. Some days you might feel like pouring your heart out, and other days maybe just a sentence or two feels right. Even a list of what went well and what didn't can be enough. The key is to let it flow naturally, to make it your own, because that's what makes journaling such a personal and grounding practice. It's less about what you write and more about how it makes you feel afterward. But beyond mental clarity, journaling helps you stay grounded in your goals, your values, and, most importantly, yourself. When you take a few minutes to reflect, you're more likely to spot those areas where things are out of balance. Maybe you've been focusing too much on one part of your life, while another has been quietly slipping by unnoticed. Or perhaps, through journaling, you realize that what seemed like a small win earlier in the day was actually something worth celebrating. It's about perspective. Journaling shifts you from being in the thick of things to being an observer of your own life. And from that vantage point, you can see where adjustments might be needed, where you're leaning too far into extremes, or where you've found that sweet spot of balance. One of the underrated parts of journaling is that it forces you to slow down. In a world where everything moves at a breakneck speed, where we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions, taking 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the day to reflect can feel like a breath of fresh air. You don't have to figure everything out right then and there, but at least you're giving yourself the chance to tune in and check where you stand. It's also a way to track your progress. Over time, those little entries start to add up. You begin to see how far you've come, how much you've grown. And on those tough days when everything feels off-kilter, looking back at those pages can remind you that balance is something you're constantly working toward. It's not a one-time achievement. Some days you'll be off, and that's okay. But by reflecting, you're giving yourself the tools to get back on track. In the end, journaling isn't just about recording your day, it's about creating a habit of reflection that helps you keep balance in your life. It's a simple practice, but its impact can be profound. Because when you take time to listen to yourself, you start to live with more intention, more clarity, and yes, more balance. Thanks for watching. Practicing Stoicism in the modern world may seem challenging, but it's all about applying those timeless principles in a way that fits your life today. Remember, Stoicism isn't about denying emotions or living a life of strict discipline. It's about cultivating inner peace, resilience, and wisdom through mindful choices. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content on philosophy and personal growth, and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you apply Stoic principles in your daily life? I'd love to hear your insights. Until next time, keep striving for virtue, focus on what you can control, and live a life aligned with your values. See you in the next one.